What is going on, warriors? Fascinating graveyard. Today we are in parts unknown. We're going to quickly visit the grave of one of my childhood idols, a man that made it possible for me to fall in love with the sport of wrestling. We're going to visit the final resting place of the Ultimate Warrior. Does anybody out there remember the first wrestling match you've ever seen? Or maybe the first wrestler that you remember watching as a kid to where you started following wrestling because of that particular wrestler? Well, the first wrestler that I remember, of course, is going to be Hulk Hogan. And the first match that I remember as a kid watching was Hulk Hogan versus King Kong Bundy. But another wrestler that would come soon after that would alert me to the greatness that he would bring to the WWF was the Ultimate Warrior, born James Bryan Hellwig on June 16th, 1959 in Crawfordsville, Indiana, not very far from where we're currently at right now. So it's the Ultimate Warrior. Man, what can you say about this guy? Easily, he's in my top 5 favorite wrestlers of all time. And I remember as a kid, this guy, almost like a rock star, would just come out with you know, well, I would play the music, but I'd probably get acclaim. The greatest in-ring entrance of all time. I mean, the greatest wrestling theme music, absolutely, of all time. Absolutely incredible. And, well, how James got his start as becoming the Ultimate Warrior, well, originally as a kid growing up in Indiana, when he was about 11 or 12, he got into the art of weightlifting because he didn't really like sports and he really didn't know what to do with himself. So he was this scrawny kind of kid, as he described himself. And then he would start lifting weights and he would get very, very into the art of bodybuilding. Wish I could do that, but I just don't have the chops. And growing up as a teenager after graduating high school, he would compete in local and state NPCs, which is the National Physique Committee. It's like the biggest amateur bodybuilding group in the country. So he would win a few awards here and there. Now, originally, when he was married, he was going to go to school to be a chiropractor. Now, eventually, as he's, gaining some kind of foothold in the bodybuilding world, and as tough and as strenuous as it could be, he makes his way out to California where he would link up with other bodybuilders. And one of them that he would link up with was Steve Bolden. Steve Bolden, of course, everybody knows him as Sting. So originally, Steve convinced James to get into the wrestling side of the business. And, these were two very big guys. And eventually they started wrestling together. Originally, they were called the Freedom Fighters. I don't remember the Freedom Fighters. They did not wrestle in the WWF when I was a kid. They were probably wrestling in like smaller wrestling venues, because that was at the time when you had like different territories. So it'd be one wrestling territory here, and then some guy would own the territory in Tennessee and Indiana and all that. And then after that, they changed their name to the Blade Runners. Probably I'm guessing they're copying the look of the Road Warriors, right? So they kind of both look similar. They're both very big, buff, had makeup, so forth and so on. Now, after deciding to go at it alone as a singles wrestler, James started wrestling in, I don't know what circuit or whatever this wrestling federation was. It wasn't the WWF, but in 1987, he would finally make his way into the WWF. And at that time, he was wrestling as the Dingo Warrior. not a really good name, right? And I think his shtick in the beginning is he would, like, after beating you, he would like throw you in that weird weasel suit or something like that. And then at the time, Vince McMahon, who is, of course, president, owner of the WWF, he decides to change this guy's name to the Ultimate Warrior because he's trying to separate this guy from, the Road Warriors and anybody else, whatever other wrestler is wrestling under that name. And the Ultimate Warrior was a huge hit. And his persona was absolutely incredible. I remember as a kid just watching this guy, I'm like, this guy is he's really that guy. And I didn't know this until like watching interviews later on as me growing up. Ultimate Warrior wasn't very popular with other wrestlers because I guess technically speaking, he wasn't a really good wrestler. They kind of just describe him as being like very artificial, very rigid, a guy that you don't want to wrestle because he would hurt you, because I guess he didn't know how to wrestle in the sense of preventing other people from getting hurt. And there was a lot of animosity towards the Ultimate Warrior that I never really understood because, I mean, frankly, I ain't gonna lie, I'm thinking they're jealous of this guy. I mean, there was a time when I was a kid that he was as popular as Hulk Hogan. I don't know if you guys remember, what was it, WrestleMania 6, when he fought Hulk Hogan? Man, let me tell you, I was watching that on pay-per-view at Michael Rockman's house. Shout out there if you're listening, Michael. And so this guy, he is wrestling Hulk Hogan, and I'll never forget when Hulk Hogan gave him the big boot. I was a Hulkamaniac, but I loved Ultimate Warrior too. I wanted Hulk Hogan to win, but I really liked Ultimate Warrior. Man, I'll never forget that moment when Hulk Hogan went for the leg drop and he missed, and Ultimate Warrior like kind of kicked out and ran, and then kind of did that whole splash thing and pinned him. And then 1, 2, 3, Ultimate Warrior won, and he won the belt. And I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but Ultimate Warrior, he was insanely popular, but he never, and I kind of don't understand it, he never really got over on becoming the man, the face of the WWF, which would later become the WWE. And, you have certain things that happened after, he would leave the WWF, he would come back to the WWF. And, there would be times where, he basically told Vince McMahon in a letter, hey, man, I want more money. And, he was doing this before a SummerSlam event. So I think Vince McMahon was like, yeah, sure, I'll give you $550,000 to show up for WrestleMania 8 or so forth and so on. And then after the SummerSlam, he basically said, man, no, I'm not going to pay you. And, Ultimate Warrior would leave. He would come back. He would leave. He would come back. Does anybody remember that time where the Ultimate Warrior left? I don't remember what year it was, but I remember when he came back, he looked really different to me because, well, his hair was shorter, it was lighter colored, and he didn't look nearly as big as he did before. And that was during the time the whole steroid thing was coming out, where the government was cracking down on the WWF because of all the steroid stuff. And the WWF had to hire a chemist from Canada, and this guy was in charge of like drug testing, and I believe Ultimate Warrior, that was kind of like the kibosh on things because, to have a physique that big, I mean, you're gonna, you still need to do the work. You still need to do the sets, the reps, but, steroids really helps you in terms of rebuilding your muscles. Later on, the Ultimate Warrior, because of Vince McMahon owning that name and likeness, Ultimate Warrior ended up going to the WCW in 96. And that was a weird entrance because I think they were saying behind the scenes that he was supposed to like enter the ring and do this entrance, and he ended up overgoing the allotted time, and it turned into a mess. He was like kind of ranting and, oh, the Ultimate Warrior, and then they had this match with him and Hulk Hogan, which a lot of wrestling enthusiasts, I call them nerds, they said that was the worst match ever of all time. Again, Ultimate Warrior, not the most technical wrestler, but Listen, just this video could have been 30 minutes, and for me to talk about his life and his career, I mean, even if it was 30 minutes, I would still be, I would still not be doing the justice that this man deserved. And again, you know, a close second to Hulk Hogan in terms of popularity. And I think eventually the last time he wrestled was 2008, and after that he was done. And the day before he died in Scottsdale, Arizona on April 8th, 2014. This is his grave right here. And before that day, I think it was April 7th, and I remember this because I was watching it on TV or on YouTube, how he had made an appearance on, was it Monday Night Raw? And I remember because I hadn't seen him in so long, and he looked like, he looked older. His hair was short, it was kind of gray, and he put on that mask, and man, that was awesome. And the next day, it was in the news that he died, and when I first heard he died, it was surreal to me. Because I just seen him on TV I just seen him on TV the night before. Because it was on YouTube, so there were like people were uploading the replay, and then I guess it got shared, so I had seen it. And crazy for that to happen. He died of I believe it was a heart attack. His father and grandfather, they all died in their 50s. So I don't know if it's some kind of or genetic, issue with the heart thing, but I know he had a couple kids that he left behind. And at the time, I'm not sure if he was living in Arizona. I know he had some kind of a wrestling school out there. And if you can see the name below right there, where it just says Warrior, he changed his name legally to Warrior, so he would be able to use his name to make money when he would do speaking engagements and stuff like that. Because like I said, all those wrestlers that come into these leagues or federation, the owner of that company, they own the name, they own the likeness, all of that. So none of these guys own their own character, if you will, or their name. I mean, does anybody remember what was that? Was that a SummerSlam when he had the pose off with Rick Rude, and they were posing, and then Rick Rude hit him from behind with something, and then they would later go on to wrestle. I think Rick Rude beat him once, and then Ultimate Warrior beat him and took the Intercontinental Championship. That was, man, I remember that. I would always go to Michael Rockman's house to watch all the pay-per-views for wrestling because he was rich and I was poor. He was rich, or so I thought. He wasn't rich, but he could afford the pay-per-view. So, yeah, I think that match between him and Hulk Hogan, man, that was, to me, that was like, that match and the match between Hulk Hogan and the Big Boss Man, I'll never forget how I felt when I was watching those matches on TV. It's just they were electric. And listen, by the time Stone Cold Steve Austin came, that's when I really didn't watch TV anymore or wrestling. So I kind of missed the whole. I mean, I knew of The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin, and I would watch some wrestling from time to time, but I kind of stopped watching TV, so I didn't really catch a whole lot. So I know they're very popular too, and some people would say they were more popular than Ultimate Warrior, but nope, not me, kid. Ultimate Warrior was an absolute rock star, and a huge piece of wrestling history, and the absolute greatest character ever of all time. I know The Rock can rival him. The Rock had a good shtick too, but the Ultimate Warrior is the best. He is the Ultimate Warrior from parts unknown, Queens, New York, 6'2", 280, all muscle. This guy was huge. And then he would start with the moon and the stars, and it's in the stars. Yeah. Rest in peace, Warrior. Your fans love you, miss you terribly, terribly. And I was glad to see that, that James, that he made amends with a lot of people that, he had a beef with back in the old days. It was, when he was going around and talking to the different wrestlers and stuff like that. That was, listen, there's a lot of jealousy, when you're trying to be a big star in wrestling, and, I don't know, but rest in peace. There'll never, ever, ever, ever be another Ultimate Warrior. There'll never be a Warrior. There'll never be another James Bryan Hellwig. Truly, truly a unique human being, a unique person, and a unique character, and a pretty big part of my childhood was wrestling and looking up to these guys and, looking at them as almost their gods. Big and strong and charismatic and some funny, and you want to, as a little kid, you want to grow up and be big and strong, just like Ultimate Warrior. All right, guys, I'm out of here. I feel that I could go on and on, but I just wanted to quickly stop by and pay my respects, for sure.